It's the 3rd of September. It's Thursday, the 3rd of September. For those of you who are at home, we're in first hour again with our studio audience, Gracie, Raylan, and Chandler. All right, here's what we're doing today. If you look at Google Classroom, then you're going to find 3 assignments. The first one, really 4 because of the check-in, but the first one I want to direct your attention to now is the one that says Demographics, Psychographics. Don't do it yet. Let me talk about it. Let's just have a conversation. So we've been working with research, right? We're researching material, we're reading it, we're trying to interpret it, and this week we're focusing on tornadoes and the likelihood that a tornado will hit any given period or place at any given year, right? So that's the data we've been working with. When you're working with data that you're going to then interpret for other people, like in a speech, or if you're going to use it in a play or whatever, you have to consider things like demographics and psychographics. So do you know, if I say the word demographic, do you know what that means?
It's like a certain place, or is it?
Not a certain place.
Certain people, like a group?
Yeah.
Like a certain group?
Yeah. So demographics refers to certain groups of people. You all have demographics, you're in a demographics. Yeah.
It didn't sound right
You can-
in the context.
Yeah, you can think of it in terms sometimes of location, right? But demographics is any characteristic that you have that you share with other people, like another group of people, and that you can't easily change, like your ethnicity or race, your skin color, the color of your hair, stuff like that. So probably most people in this area fall primarily into Caucasian in terms of ethnicity, right? So you're in that demographic. You're male or female or whatever,
Or
right?
Your age.
Or what?
Your age.
Or your age, right? So you and I share demographics, like probably, like I'm making assumptions, so I don't mean to assume your ethnicity. But if I assume your ethnicity, I say, okay, well, everyone in this room is Caucasian, right? Probably. With other things, because if you're alive right now, then there's a lot of like past genetics that you have. So you may have other like Native American or African American or whatever, right? But you have your ethnicity. Then you have your age. We may share ethnicity. We don't share age, right? Demographics. You 3 are one demographic, right? 15 to 16-year-olds, teenagers. And I am the sad demographic, right? So demographics are just characteristics that you can't really change about yourself. Then there's something called psychographics. Psychographics are things like your belief systems, your political point of view, your religion, your philosophy of life, your favorite color. Those things are also ways that you categorize people, right? Like you're Christian or Muslim or Jewish or whatever, or you're a Democrat or a Republican or whatever. So those are other things to categorize people, to understand them. But those things can change, and they do change. Like over your lifetime, you'll develop different opinions and things like that. Does that make sense? So demographics and psychographics are important to pay attention to when you're doing research for 2 reasons. Why might it be important to understand them? Like when you're doing
Who
research.
you're making content for, whatever it is you're writing or like looking at.
So one way, so what Chandler's saying is like, it's important to know like who you're making content for, whether that's media production, for social media influencing, or writing a play, or writing an essay, or giving a speech. Knowing the demographics and psychographics of your audience is helpful because what?
He's saying like Nazi joke in like Germany.
Right.
Not land well.
Right, exactly. So if you you want to know, it helps you to not offend people, right? The last thing you want to do when you're communicating with people is offend somebody, because once you offend somebody, you've shut down the communication. The communication has failed, and they're not going to listen to you, right? So there's no point. So, you don't want to offend people. B, so if you know, like, okay, I am dealing with this kind of people and they are offended by this, I'm not going to deal with this issue, right? Another thing to think about is if I know that I'm talking to, let's say I'm talking to a group of teachers, right? The demographic and psychographics indicate, okay, they all know a certain amount of information that I also know, so I don't have to cover things like basic discipline procedures, right? Because everybody knows them. Does that make sense? So you can target your audience more. So it's important to understand demographics, psychographics from your audience point of view. When you're researching and you're accumulating information for yourself, how else might it be important? Like what's another way of looking at demographics and psychographics that are important when you're researching and putting knowledge into your head?
So you know where the information's coming from, because, like, I don't know, it would
Yeah.
probably, like, say where it's coming from, like, a geographic location, but if it doesn't, and they
Right.
just say, like, give numbers, and they're from that area,
Right.
and those people, and not for everyone, then, like, it might be wrong.
Yeah, so that's a great point, right? You want to know, essentially, you want to know the demographics and psychographics of the source material, right? What are these people's point of view? Yeah, another way of saying it is what are their biases? So the word bias has a negative connotation, right? Because if you're biased against a race of people, that's wrong. Yeah, like there's no argument there. But biases can be good things also. Like I am biased against doing things that increase my chances of having cancer or something like that, right? So if I have to make a choice between eating a healthy snack or drinking gasoline, I'm biased towards the healthy snack, right? I have a bias against vanilla ice cream. I don't enjoy it by itself. I enjoy it on pie.
What about with chocolate syrup? Do you just...
I enjoy it with chocolate syrup, right? The only reason to eat vanilla ice cream is if you're going to put a whole bunch of other diabetes-causing things on top of it, right? I've noticed, so I lost some weight, a little bit of weight this summer, and since then I've noticed what?
Say go you.
Thank you. I've noticed that most of my analogies are food-related now, because I would just really love some ice cream. But it doesn't matter. But I am biased towards chocolate ice cream. Like if there's a chocolate choice, I'm going to do that. Yeah. So biases aren't necessarily bad unless it's like bad. And sometimes it is, right? If it's about race or ethnicity. So there's that to consider, right? What are the biases of the people who are creating this information that you're putting into your head? How else might it be important to look at biases or demographic psychographics? Here's how to think of it. Your demographics or your psychographics are the lens that you see things through, right? I see through the Jason Paris lens. Chandler sees through the Chandler Colvin lens. Raylan sees through whatever lens she has, right? So like, I happen to have my green glasses that make me look very cool. They are dope. But here's the thing. So I got these because the brain rules guy said green light helps you to focus, right? And so it's an experiment. I bought some, these cost $10 on Amazon, and I was like, well, I'll give it a try. Here's what they look like at home. Wait, this is a disaster. There, see? You're focused now, right? Much more focused on what I'm saying. But if I put these on, I see everything looks green, right? I'm seeing through a particular lens. So the demographic psychographics give you the lens that you see things through. So when you're researching, it's important that you know what about yourself?
The lens that you're looking through?
What is the lens you're looking through, right? If I'm reading information, it's filtering through my experience, through my belief system, through my genetics. It's filtering through all of that, right? And I'm putting that information into my head and I'm putting it together, and my interpretation of it will be biased towards my lenses. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's important for two reasons. Number one, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to admit it, right? So if I'm going to talk to you about tornadoes, I'm giving a speech on tornadoes and I'm giving you this information, maybe I have to open that speech with, all right, I have lived in Oklahoma most of my life. I've never been killed by a tornado. I have sought shelter many times. So I'm not particularly afraid of tornadoes, right? So that's a psychographic thing. So I may interpret this data about tornadoes in a way that makes me less prone to worry about tornadoes. Does that make sense? On the other hand, if I knew somebody who had been killed by a tornado, or if I had had a really scary experience with a tornado, or if my property had been destroyed, I may have a different view of the tornado, right? Both of those views may be right, yeah, but it depends on your life experience and the lenses you're seeing stuff through. You're following me on this?
Yes.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. There's a demographic, psychographic form that I want you to fill out. Before you fill it out, there are rules. Number one, you have to be honest with the answers. Number two, some of the questions may feel kind of personal, like what's your religion, what's your political affiliation, if you have one, stuff like that. So here's how it works. Let's say the question is, what is your religious affiliation, or what's your spiritual beliefs, or whatever. It lists a whole bunch of religions, right? I suspect most people in this area are going to pick the first one that's on the list, right? But maybe not everybody will. I need you to not be funny and say you're Hindu if you're not Hindu, right? Because that will skew the results. The other thing to know is I won't be able to see, and you won't be able to see, the individual responses. All we'll be able to see at the end of this is the graph, like the pie charts of like 50% of the speech team identified as human, 25 identified as Mandalorian, 25 identified as whatever, right? So it's going to be the entire speech team, and it's our demographics and psychographics. So I need you to answer honestly. There are some questions that give you the option of answering other, like if I didn't list your religion on there, then pick other. There's also the prefer not to answer choice on some of them. So like ethnicity, you can pick the ethnicity, the primary ethnicity that you identify as, or you can pick other because I didn't put it on there, or you can pick prefer not to answer. I want to discourage you from picking prefer not to answer unless, like, you actually, honest to God, prefer not to answer for a real reason, right? Does that make sense? If that's true, then definitely say prefer not to answer, right? Because that will also give us data when we look at the data, like 10% of us prefer not to answer the ethnicity question, and then we can dive into that if we want to, right? So I just need you to be honest with the form, okay? And understand that I'm not going to see any individual responses, just the collective responses. Number two, the second thing is the last tornado, no, Twister, Let's Play Twister. The last Let's Play Twister assignment is up also, and I want you to do that afterwards. And I want you to sort of in the back of your mind have what you have just thought about with your own demographics and psychographics as you answer that question. And it's one question. I give you a statement, and then I ask you to either advocate for that statement, like prove that that statement is true, or to refute that statement, which means prove that statement is untrue, based upon your understanding of the likelihood of tornadoes hitting, right? So basically, I'm giving you a debate resolution, and you're going to argue one side or the other. And I don't care which you do, but I would like you to start with, I'm arguing for this statement, or I'm arguing against this statement. Here's the deal. Dazzle me with your brilliance on that. It's worth like 50 points. You guys are some of the smartest people, some of you at home are the smartest people I've ever met. So don't take the lazy way out on that. Like, really think about your response to the question. And I think that's it. Also, Curious Incident is up. You'll have time to do all of these things this hour. So section 4 of Curious Incident, do that. Any questions? Okay, 1, 2, 3, go.